What's up? Welcome to Tales Tomorrow. I'm Morrow, your storyteller for today. With me, I have some more RPG horror stories. Forget for lack of arms. It is really cold here in Carolinas, and I don't feel like standing around and freezing my little tiefling butt off. So instead, I'm just gonna hang out here. I hope it's okay. I hope you don't mind it. Either way, let's get some RPG horror stories for today. Returning player attacks group and rage quits mid-session when it doesn't go their way. Some context. I started playing with this group almost 6 years ago now, but as most group scheduling has been an issue, so we run sessions if we have 3 or more players, and if everyone shows up, we should have like 8 PCs to play through Discord. Player in question, let's call him William, was there for my first session and was a menace. We were in a dungeon, and when we came up with some traps, my character attempted to find a path to the party to cross safely, and the more dexterous of the group follows a step or two behind. William then runs through, setting off many of the traps with us in the danger zone. My character, having military training and background, immediately doesn't trust or like this character. Then, because of scheduling troubles, William doesn't play with us for about 3 months. Now, on one hand, you would think that maybe William is just pulling a goofy, just a silly, William's character just going full Leroy Jenkins and ruining the plan. But alternatively, that could be also a bit of a smart thing. Like if you just run through fast enough so the traps don't get you, you don't have to worry about it, and traps are set off and don't hurt anybody. But now if people are going through the traps in the middle of it, that's definitely a problem. In that time, my character got a better understanding of the party without William's character being around, and had his guard up with anything to do with this dangerous individual. Fast forward to past 2 sessions, we've long since left the dungeon, boarded a ship, crossed an ocean, partook in a local festival, and charred passage to a floating island, and now he returns. We're struggling with a puzzle, and he figured it out, but he won't help us solve it. Instead, he was throwing pieces of paper from his perch in a tree that the party hadn't spotted him in yet due to the high stealth modifier. Okay, wait, hold on. So just to recap, this guy, this little goofball William, basically is a menace for the party. Nobody says anything about it. Not even the DM tries to correct it. Nobody speaks up and say, hey, William, why don't you make yourself a little bit more useful and start being such a menace to the party? Are you playing with us or against us here, William? Nobody speaks up or makes any kind of fuss. Like, has a conversation about why William is not cooperating with the party whatsoever. William leaves, y'all have a good time, and then he comes back and continues being a menace. What? Okay, so I got a question. What is William's deal? Why aren't they working with you guys? They're like, oh, I solved the puzzle, but I ain't gonna tell. Hee 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 hoo hoo. Like, that sounds so silly to me. If you solve the puzzle, you would think you'd want to share it with the rest of the party, so I can move on forward instead of just sitting around doing nothing or waiting for everybody else to solve it. Like, what is the point of being like, hey, I solved the puzzle. I don't gotta do anything at all, and you guys don't even know the puzzle at all. It's like, yeah, if you could tell us something about the puzzle, William, maybe we all could move on about it, huh? At some point, we made a critical mistake, and the statues that were part of the puzzle, and we had a spot of combat, and he did nothing to assist. After that combat, we take a short rest, and he throws a note at my character. I read it, and the first 2 dozen words are insults that are borderline slurs that are racially directed at my character. I stop reading after the string of insults ends. I hand it off to a character, the cleric, that takes interest in my response to the note and the answer to the puzzle. If your character can't even get along with the party, why even have that character in the first place? Like, if this was like some sort of like inside joke, ha 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 funny, maybe I could be like, whatever. But then it wouldn't become an RPG horror story if this didn't bother you. So my question is, if William just does this thing because it's William, when you think William does, why aren't you guys speaking up about this early on, or talking to William directly saying, hey, William, why is the character being so antagonistic? Why aren't you working with the party? Why are you character writing insults to my character for no reason in the first place? What is going on here? What is is this like a normal dynamic for you guys or what? Because I don't understand it. Like, I'm assuming it's not, because you're writing an RPG horror story mentioning that's what he'd done. Unless there's a lot of context missing behind the scenes that we're just not getting. This feels like it's a problem player that's not being addressed. I don't know, man. Maybe to me, it may seem like hindsight 2020. Maybe at the time it wasn't, but like, this seems like a problem. It sounds like you guys need to speak up and talk to William out of game. The puzzle requires quite a bit of strength to progress, and our strong characters are not present in the session, so it's slow going. Start to call it quits and begin. Okay, I do gotta speak up about this part. Designing a puzzle for a DM that requires a particular character, a particular group of characters to be there to do something specific, that's, in my opinion, a really bad design. Imagine, if you will, the puzzle specific requires you to have your rogue present for the session. But Rogue made an oopsie poopsie and made some set plans on the side, or maybe they're stuck in traffic, or like I was, they were snowed in and literally couldn't make it because power and internet was down, and that sucks. So now you guys have to continue without the Rogue and figure out a way to go around it. But the DM designed the entire puzzle to require the Rogue to be there, to require the extra dexterity and thieves tools and stuff like that, and expertise to really solve the puzzle. So now you guys stuck trying to do what? Brute force it? Wait, is that a backup plan at all for this kind of thing? I feel like, okay, this is not a dig towards William at all. This kind of a redirect towards the design itself of the DM. Not necessarily to the DM specifically, but just in general to all DMs. When you make puzzles, and take it from me as a DM, I as a DM, I've gone through this and I've experienced this. Do not do this to yourself. You gotta railroad the party and block them in their tracks. When you're creating this situation where a specific party member, a specific type of party member is required to proceed forward, you're creating a block for your players so they physically cannot do anything unless they get super lucky and roll a 20 on something, 20 on athletics, 20 on dexterity, whatever they're doing, whatever specific thing that they need to get through. It's like requiring let's say for example, a wizard to be present at the party because he's the only one that's able to cast detect magic, because otherwise you guys don't know how to do the puzzle because it requires detect magic. Well, the rest of the party then stuck that. They just can't progress forward. If you are going to have a player that is like missing, you better have a backup plan on what the party can do, or at least make the puzzle a little bit lighter and easier for them so that they can still continue progressing forward. Otherwise, guess what? The entire session, they're going to be trying to do this puzzle, and then the session ends and you can't do the puzzle. Do not do that to yourself. Do not block the party like that by requiring a specific party member to be there. Anyway, rant over. Let's continue. We start to call quits and begin shifting our focus to the other floating island around us. And when he then throws a smoke bomb and attempts to rob the NPC that's on the expedition with us, they bankrolled us. The NPC is a level 5 wizard the DM made as a long-term threat or ally depending on how we choose to interact with her. She makes a perception check that higher than his stealth roll and lands a hit over the cantrip, even though the disadvantage of the smoke bomb he deployed. My character also rolls perception at disadvantage that's higher than William's character's stealth and begins to move to protect the NPC. She takes him out single-handedly with a high-level magic missile. We attempt to restrain him, and he barely makes it out of the bonds he is in. My character throws a dagger at him when he tries to make a move after getting out of the bonds and knocks him unconscious again. At this point, I'm thinking about the only other interaction I've had with him. I'm thinking that we need more permanent solution, at least for the time we're on the island. I say that I cut his Achilles heel and his hamstring to prevent him from becoming a further problem. We don't go through with that as he would die since he's making death saves. The DM/NPC intervenes and instead uses an enslavement potion to prevent him from harming us or running away to become a bigger problem, which is a mercy compared to what the party as a whole were prepared to do to him. He tries to push the limits and it doesn't go well for him. He then tells us that he needs to go and leaves the call. Yeah, I think anybody would do that. Imagine if is a William. Okay, yeah, we're not getting William's out of the story, and I feel like there's a lot of context missing. I genuinely don't understand what the hell is going on in the set. There's a lot of stuff that's going on here that is completely against what you should be doing at a D&D table. First of all, you shouldn't solve out-of-game problems in-game. And the solution that the DM and the players are trying to do is not okay in my opinion. Cutting someone's Achilles heel and hamstring to prevent it from just moving in general is not the way to do it, because now you're taking away any sort of ability for movement and including agency from the player alone. Listen, I get it. William is a nuisance. I get it. He's a bit of a prankster, but you should be talking to William, not dealing with William's character to try to figure this out and get through this. The problem isn't William's character. The problem is William. So you need to talk to William directly one-on-one and pause the game for a moment just to try to get this out of the way. Because the solution you guys putting up with the whole like enslavement potion, no, that's not a good solution in the slightest. Guess what it's doing? It's taking away player agency. And yes, on one hand, there could be an argument of, well, William is not going to stop unless he just keeps on going. Well, talk to William then. And if William is not going to stop, remove not his character from the equation, but remove William from the equation. If the problem here is not the character, but the player alone, remove the problem player. If, however, the problem is the character and you just need to ask William to basically not, try to screw over the party or go against the party specifically and for everybody to cooperate, then that could be in itself a resolution. You shouldn't be doing this to his this character regardless. This is an out-of-character issue. This is an out-of-game issue, and it should be solved out-of-game by talking to William directly. Imagine if it wasn't William, and suddenly DM or DMPC pulls out an enslavement potion to make it so the character literally is docile and can do anything. Well, good job. You take away player agency. One of the core things for playing D&D or really any TTRPG, when you suddenly don't have player agency, you might as well not even have the player there, because they can't even do anything. What's the point of them being at the table? If I was William, I too would just say, I need to go and leave the call, because suddenly all of my play agency is just taken away from me. This is a problem with William. Yes, 100%. William is a problem player, but you guys are not any better. The rest of the table is not doing good, including the DM. Y'all should have just stopped the game for a moment, give it a pause, and taken at least 10 minutes. You could have taken 10 minutes to just have an out-of-game conversation about the etiquette and expectations at the table and what party members should not do against other party members. That's what you guys should have done, not this. What you guys done was a terrible solution in my opinion. I don't know, maybe I'm overreacting. People in the comment section, what do you think? Do you think the party did good here by trying to take away William's agency, even though William's clearly the problem player, or it should have been a different solution? What are your thoughts on it? I genuinely want to know. I'll voice my thoughts on it, but I could be wrong. Listen, I'm just a dumb tiefling on the internet. What do I know? Anyway, let's get to the next story for today. Last two longtime friends as players, and I am relieved? Backstory. What is a close friend since we were kids? The kind who shoots the crap with each other on a daily basis. Another hypothetical question somehow naturally turned me into running Bardic Tales style games for her for over 20 years. I've improved so much as a DM because of her high tolerance for my crap, and some of my favorite stories are from her characters. The other is a friend I met through her, has been part of my official DM streak for over a decade. She's a chaos gremlin in the best way and really got me out of my shell and practically forced me to grow in my improv. We meshed well and had a lot of fun. I'll call them Cat, friend with the kid era, and Plushy, Cat's friend. Story. So we managed to make it through 2 camps, with the first one being a hot mess and the second vastly improved from the first. Although Cat and Plushy both cycled through 3 characters before settling on character that fit the second campaign. Thinking back, maybe that was a hint. Both players were there for me when life got hard, my failing health got in the way of running my game, or when one of my former players sent me 800 words of why I suck as a DM, which ironically started with, I don't want to be that person, but man, I hope that when my players tell me that I'm not doing good as a DM, they don't send me like an 800-word like letter. They just tell me directly. Good lord. Like, okay, on one hand, I understand some people like don't like confrontations and they'd rather just write it out on paper in their own time and share the feedback, which I fully welcome too. But I hope that I make my players feel comfortable, so like if I do something bad, they can tell me, hey, do you remember that one thing you did in that one like a week ago during that one session and that stuff? Yeah, that I wasn't really cool with that. You know, we can kind of have a conversation from there. But 800 words and start off with, I don't want to be that person. Guess what? You have to be that person. Sometimes feedback is important, and DMs will gladly take your feedback as long as you give them feedback that they can work to improve. Unless it's a really bad DM that doesn't know how to take criticism. For the campaign 3, I wanted to do my best. I did a session 0 and discussed characters. I introduced them to a new player I had met. I ran after school D&D for his son, who seemed like he is a good fit. We talked about what we wanted: bigger baddies, early introduction, more roleplay, more puzzles, more secrets, maybe an established group of religious sect to face off with. So I wrote. I talked to my spouse, who was also in the campaign, and we wrote his character into his backstory of the BBEG to help tie the adventures to this evil group's influence. And I went with a cult because I find the group psychologically fascinating. So for the session 1, I opened it with a hard warning that the game was bigger, but also rougher. People don't join cults for giggles, and if I ever hit a topic in any of the victim stories that was a hard pass, to let me know immediately. The game was a little rough to start. New guy ended up playing a character that did not mesh well, so we wrote the character out and got a much better fit with the second try. Plush in particular tried to antagonize the first attempt as they were at odds over alignment, and then shifted the antagonistic stance to the new character who had literally no relation. I mitigated that as well as I could, talking to both Plushy and him separately, and it got better for a while. Cat, however, used to have really interesting characters, but this time around built a cryptid whose only gimmick was how to gross out the DM, which admittedly leaned into my appreciation of body horror video games and films, so I didn't mind. Her character was fun in how hard she leaned into the fish out of the water trope. Now, on the topic regarding character alignment, unless you split your character specifically to talk to each other, how would your character know another character's character alignment unless it's specifically said like, oh yeah, I am lawful and I am good, or I am chaotic and I'm evil? You could probably maybe infer some things about the backgrounds and such, but to assume immediately, it just seems a little weird. I don't know. It seems like maybe Plushie just going after the new guy just to go after the new guy. It just seems odd. Because like her character goes after the first character, then it goes after the second character. Unless it's some sort of a dynamic that they decided on, it seems a little bit odd. So we get deeper into the campaign. Plushie pretends to warm up to new guy, Cat being weird for the sake of being weird, and they start checking out of the campaign. Plushie eventually complains to me about how she hates fighting with the new guy's character to get anything done, and Cat complains about how all the fights feel unfair and she can't keep track of who is who. Here's the thing. New guy is playing a cloistered student who's only just dropped into the realm of adventuring. He still has the I don't want to die mentality of a noob, and that makes a lot of sense for his character. The others, however, have been playing with me for over a decade. They know I try to subvert expectations with my encounters, and there's often a peaceful solution, so they usually jump in head first, to which new guy's character nearly faints from fear. Kat, on the other hand, never takes notes and is constantly juggling her toddler because her husband is a deadbeat when it comes to anything Kat wants. But that's another story. Point is, she was always distracted, but to mitigate that, we had a rotation on who took the group notes, and my spouse literally every game wrote down and built a directory of every character the team met. It's all online, so she could reference it if she wanted to, but she never does. Perhaps, potentially, and this is just a potentiality, maybe when you said your campaign is going to be bigger and better and tougher and more grittier and stuff, maybe you overdone it a little bit. Maybe the lighthearted points of the campaign or the campaigns that you've done before was more of a proper pace for everybody. Also, it's really weird. It's just really strange for Plushie to keep bringing up that she's just not meshing well with the new guy's character. It's one thing, let's say, for example, if your character's not meshing well, but it feels like maybe Plushie and the new guy just not meshing well, or maybe Plushie just doesn't like the new guy in general as a whole because she didn't like the first character and she doesn't like the second character. Now, there could be potentialities that maybe the characters don't mesh whatsoever, and maybe that becomes a more personal thing, but also could be potentially character bleed. Character bleed is when somebody is putting themselves and cannot separate between what the character does versus what they do. Let's say, for example, they get really frustrated or angry or annoyed with something happening IRL, they take it into their character, and the IRL things become their character's feelings, and they can't separate the two, so therefore they have entire character bleed, or basically this one character that they're playing now becomes more annoyed because they had like a really terrible day or something, or taking things personally because it's happening in character. Somebody offended your player character, oh, they're offending me personally, he's trying to insult and besmirch my name, not my player character's name. But also, Cat doesn't really have an excuse because your spouse is literally keeping notes of everything. All Cat needs to do is just open a Google Doc, which they can't do for some reason. Eventually, we hit a breaking point, but God forbid, Plushie just fade into obscurity. She wanted a grand goodbye with all players present, so she delayed and delayed and delayed dropping out while I'm bending over backwards trying to get her to reconcile. I've been focused on her character to give her more role-playing opportunities like she wanted, but she'd check out as soon as anyone else was in the spotlight. That's when Kat messaged me saying she realized why she didn't like my campaign. She had this whole thing about how she expected my campaign to be silly and fun like the last one, which left me confused because being hunted by a lich and his Dracolich puppet is silly, and she really wanted me to fix it. She even had notes on how to do it. I saw red. She couldn't take notes during the game, but that was apparently fine. And she rejected my idea of taking a story break and having the characters run through Wild Beyond the Witchlight, which is, if played right, a very silly module. Interesting. So basically, Plushie just checks out and just disappears and ghosts everybody. But Kat has a whole thing about the campaign notes and everything. Okay, so on one hand, I think Kat probably nailed it. Is that maybe she wanted less serious campaign, a more silly, goofy campaign. You know, something with a little bit less lore, a little bit. You put in a lot of effort and a lot of work into players that didn't want to play that specific game. I think that is the biggest crux of it all. You put a lot of effort, and you probably put a lot of good effort. But you have players that don't want to play that, or you have one player that apparently doesn't mesh well with the new guy for some reason. I don't know why. Whatever Plushie's problem is, and whatever Kat's problem is, clearly this is a campaign that they weren't fit for, which is a extremely unfortunate. I wish they would have spoken to you about this before one started going from obscurity and the other ones wrote up all these notes and stuff. On one hand, in a sense, Kat isn't doing anything bad per se. It is a little bit silly that she's able to take all the notes of how to improve your game in specificality, but won't bother to read any of your notes. It is a little bit hypocritical, but at least that's some sort of feedback there, you know? It may not be feedback you enjoy, and the fact that they're not putting in effort, they're putting in more effort to say about what's wrong with your game instead of actually reading the notes, which is really, really bad. But feedback is feedback, I suppose. I don't know, man. Maybe I'm just a little bit too lenient when it comes to these sort of things. I will say, though, that what Plushy's doing and the way the Cat's handling things isn't okay. There's a better way to do this, and it's literally by just talking to your DM. While Plushy just fading into obscurity and basically ghosting everybody, disappearing, is not a good thing. And Cat not even putting in a little bit of effort to just read the notes just to get the general context is also not okay, because they giving feedback on how to fix things when all they had to do in order to learn and keep up with the lore is just read the damn Google Doc that your spouse is taking notes on. You have a note taker in your party that is sharing the notes and nobody's reading the notes, which is horrible. The only person I feel like is actually taking anything seriously right now is maybe the new guy and your spouse. So put the game on hiatus. 6 weeks to get me through the holidays and recover from burnout, both from the game and work, and ended up being good because I had a couple of health emergencies that sent me to the hospital. I still wonder if the stress triggered it. Our first session of the year was last week, and plus she got a grand goodbye, which I may or may not have rushed because she insisted it to be at the end of a session. Then, afterwards, I talked to Kat and confirmed she wasn't coming back either, as her character had followed Plushies into the sunset. Honestly, the only thing I felt was a mix of disappointment and relief. Kat got me in the habit of canceling at the drop of a hat anyway, and Plushie was taking out her job stress in game rather than trying to have fun. Have we grown apart? No idea, but I'm leaning that way. The table is not small that I'm comfortable with, and the blessing, curse, of the DM is that always more players out there. I've already had a few other parents for my kids' game ask if I do adult games too. I'm looking forward to D&D being fun again. Before I can make my comments on what do we mean by adult games, because we read a lot of RPG horror stories here that specifically were focusing on like more adult theme games. Are we talking about adult games where just adults are playing D&D, or adult theme bout wow wow kind of stuff? Because I mean, hey, listen, run whatever you want to run. You want to run sexy game, run sexy game. As long as you advertise ahead of time, it's that kind of game. When my Succulendia campaign goes off and comes off, comes in multiple ways, by the way. Listen, when my Succulendia game pops off in more ways than one, I make sure that it's advertised for everybody that it's that kind of sexy Succulendia game where you have to help succubi solve their everyday problems. And that's literally it. I don't know. I have no idea what kind of campaign I would even run in Succulendia, honestly. But hey, at the end of the day, I think this is actually in a sense, not the most satisfying conclusion to the story, but this is indeed a conclusion. Plushie and Cat clearly weren't meshing with you, and for whatever reason decided this one game was just not for them to completely dip on you. If a player decides to dip on you because of the singular game and decides to cut contact, that is directly on them. That's specifically exactly entirely on them. I've lost people in my life that basically just stopped communicating with me over the stupidest, simplest of stuff. Dude, I even had somebody that decided not to be friends with me because I didn't want to join the Discord server because I was already like 100 different Discord servers. I just couldn't join any of the rest of them, dude. I was like, well, I can't. I'm already full. I'm sorry. I literally cannot. You're just gonna make a Discord server, play Minecraft for like 2 weeks, and then nobody's gonna talk in it in the first place. I'm sorry. I don't want to join that. People will come and go, but the true homies will always stick with you. And at the end of the day, listen, as a DM, it is both a blessing and a curse that there's never a want for a DM for a group of players to play with. People will always want a DM. As a DM, it is your position, your duty to be wanted by players. And the only thing you can really do is just try to make a most positive experience for the players that you want to keep and just do your best from there. The best thing to do though, maybe vet them, and that's about it. Otherwise, you had an experience with Cat and Plushie, that's something you can learn from. And at the end of the day, that's the best that you can really do from it. Like, you can dwell on like why Cat and Plushie kind of suck in general, but at the end of the day, I think it's best just to take what they've done with a grain of salt, learn the lessons from them, and then move on forward, hoping for better and more engaged players. Find somebody that's similar to your spouse or new guy that actually actively participate and even take notes. Your spouse in particular, honestly, goated for taking the notes. Oh my god. Players that take notes are amazing. I love players that take notes.
And with that, that's going to be all our stories for today. I want to thank you very much for watching, and thanks so much for being here. If you like what I do, consider subscribing to the channel and leaving a like. Also, if the RPG Horror Stories ever goes down, or if you want to submit your own personalized horror story, email is down in the description below. I'll see you again in more Tales Tomorrow. Bye-bye.